The bustling corridors of Aurelia Station were alive with sound, color, and tension. Ships of every shape and size floated in docking bays, their hulls polished to a mirror shine, while merchants and traders haggled in dozens of alien tongues. Humans moved among them quietly, unnoticed by many but always observing. Captain Elias Kane walked steadily through the main concourse, his hands resting lightly on his side holster. His sharp eyes scanned the crowd, noting the unusual unease that seemed to ripple through the alien visitors that day. Elias had been stationed on Aurelia for nearly 3 cycles, long enough to understand the fragile balance of peace that held the hub together. Trade flowed smoothly because no species wanted open conflict here. Yet today, something was different. The usual polite nods and measured words of the Deathworlders, aliens from planets harsh enough to kill their own young if they were weak, seemed hollow. Their eyes flicked around nervously, and their hands twitched toward hidden weapons beneath their robes. A sudden explosion rocked the eastern docking bay, throwing travelers to the ground. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and a plume of smoke rose where a cargo container had once stood. Panic spread instantly. Other alien species froze in fear, unsure whether this was an accident or the beginning of something far worse. Amid the chaos, humans moved with careful precision, guiding civilians toward safe exits and checking for hidden dangers. Elias's communicator crackled. "Captain Kane, this is Station Control. Multiple incidents across the hub. We suspect coordinated attacks. Requesting human team to respond." He nodded even though no one could see him. "Understood. Assemble at Dock 7. We move fast, we move smart. Keep civilians safe. Everyone else..." His voice dropped. "Duck and pray." At Dock 7, Elias met his team. Mara, a tactical expert with an uncanny ability to predict enemy movements. Jonah, a mechanic turned improviser who could make weapons out of almost anything. And Tessa, a communications specialist who excelled at decoding alien signals on the fly. They looked at each other briefly, a silent understanding passing among them. Where others saw panic, humans saw patterns. Where others saw danger, they saw opportunity. "Deathworlders," Elias said quietly. "They're done pretending to be civilized. If we wait, the station falls. If we act..." He let the thought hang. Acting meant risking everything, but humans had survived worse. Their first challenge came almost immediately. A squad of Deathworlders, heavily armed and moving with terrifying precision, had cut through one of the central security gates. They didn't negotiate. They didn't hesitate. Buildings were crushed, plasma weapons fired indiscriminately, and screams echoed through the metal corridors. Alien security forces tried to resist, but their training was rigid and predictable. The Deathworlders exploited it easily. Elias and his team moved through maintenance tunnels to avoid detection. Jonah held up a device he had assembled in minutes, a portable sensor that could detect structural weaknesses in walls. Mara scanned schematics of the station on her wrist display, mapping out escape routes for civilians. Tessa tapped rapidly on her console, intercepting communications from Deathworlder units and relaying positions to Elias. "Docking Bay 4, Tessa said urgently. "They're heading there next. A lot of civilians in the cargo area." Elias nodded. "We move. Go quiet, go fast." The team emerged from the tunnels moments later. The scene at Docking Bay 4 was horrifying. Deathworlders were breaking containers, firing at anything that moved. Panicked traders ran for cover. But humans didn't panic. Mara threw a small EMP grenade into the center of the attackers, briefly disrupting their weapons. Jonah reinforced a nearby wall to create cover for fleeing civilians. Elias took a calculated shot that disabled a hovering surveillance drone tracking their movements. Alien witnesses could not believe what they were seeing. While most species froze or fled, humans reacted instinctively, improvising solutions in real time. The Deathworlders adapted quickly too, but humans matched them in unpredictability. Hours passed in a blur of action. Elias and his team guided dozens of civilians to safe zones, sabotaged Deathworlder weapons, and moved strategically through the station's complex corridors. Each encounter revealed more about the attackers, nature, They were fast, brutal, and seemingly limitless in endurance. Yet, the humans were relentless. They did not give up. At one point, Elias found himself facing a lone Deathworlder in a narrow maintenance corridor. The alien was massive with jagged armor plating and claws designed to tear through metal. It struck first, fast and precise. Elias sidestepped, using the narrow walls to his advantage. In one fluid motion, he tripped the alien over a loose pipe, sending it crashing to the floor. A quick strike with a metal rod immobilized the creature. He didn't celebrate. There was no time. The station itself was under siege. He could hear explosions and alarms from every direction. The human instinct for survival pushed him forward. By nightfall, Aurelia Station was scarred, but still standing. Deathworlders had retreated from the central hub but remained in control of several peripheral zones. Other alien species were shaken, whispering in fear and awe about the humans who had managed to survive, and even counterattack against beings from worlds that could have wiped out entire colonies with ease. Elias gathered his team in the remnants of a safe control room. Their clothes were scorched, their faces streaked with soot, but their eyes burned with determination. They didn't expect humans to fight like this, Mara said, checking her weapon for damage. No, Elias agreed. They think strength comes from size or armor or weaponry. We know better. Strength comes from adaptability, courage, and teamwork, and that's something they can't predict. A distant explosion shook the station. Tessa's monitor lit up with incoming Deathworlder communications. They're regrouping, she said. Larger forces heading this way. They've realized we're a threat. Elias leaned forward. Then we prepare. Humans survive because we adapt, we improvise, and we never ever give up. Outside the control room, the station trembled under the first signs of the second wave. Humans moved among the chaos like a small, determined current cutting through a raging river. They were few, but they were different. They were unpredictable. And the Deathworlders, for the first time, were about to discover that brute force alone would not be enough to crush humanity. As the night deepened and the station shuddered from distant blasts, Elias allowed himself a brief thought. This was only the beginning. The Deathworlders had stopped pretending, but humans had just begun showing what made them special. And when the next wave hit, they would be ready, not just to survive, but to change the way every species on Aurelia Station saw humanity forever. The station's metal walls shuddered under repeated blasts as the Deathworlders advanced through Aurelia Station's outer corridors. Smoke and debris filled the air, the acrid scent of burning fuel stinging human nostrils. Civilians ran in every direction, shrieking in fear. Alien security forces had largely collapsed under the sudden, brutal assault, leaving the station's fate uncertain. Yet in the chaos, small pockets of humans moved with calm determination, their actions precise, almost instinctive. Captain Elias Kane led a small human strike team through one of the maintenance tunnels. Mara, Jonah, and Tessa flanked him, their faces grim but focused. Each step was calculated, each breath measured. They carried nothing more than what they could use immediately, relying on ingenuity and adaptability rather than heavy weaponry or brute strength. They're spreading out, Tessa said, pointing to the holographic map projected from her wrist device. They're hitting civilian zones first. They want to scare everyone into submission. Then we hit back smart, Elias said. We don't match them in strength. We match them in thinking ahead. Set traps, create confusion, use the environment. That's how humans survive. Their first engagement came at a central power hub. A squad of Deathworlders clad in jagged metallic armor had begun tearing through conduits and control panels. Elias signaled and Mara dropped a small bundle of electromagnetic charges into the room. Lights flickered and alarms screeched as the charges disabled the attackers' weapons briefly. Jonah used the distraction to swing across a broken catwalk and slam a control lever, releasing heavy crates that fell on two of the Deathworlders. The remaining Deathworlders roared in frustration. Their movements became erratic. Humans moved calmly through the confusion, guiding trapped civilians to safer corridors while keeping a step ahead of their attackers. Alien onlookers watched in disbelief. Where the Deathworlders relied on sheer force, humans relied on anticipation, teamwork, and improvisation. Every obstacle they faced became an opportunity. Hours passed in a relentless blur of small victories and strategic retreats. Humans were fewer in number, but they forced the Deathworlders to overextend, chasing phantom threats and falling into cleverly laid traps. Jonah had rigged maintenance bots with improvised explosives. Mara had set up crossfire ambushes in tight corridors. Tessa intercepted communications, predicting the enemy's next move. Elias coordinated them all, his mind always 2 steps ahead. At one point, the humans encountered a heavily armed Deathworlder squad attempting to breach a civilian dormitory. The aliens moved in perfect synchronization, confident in their superior strength. Elias studied the corridor. The walls were old, corrosion weakening their structure. He smiled slightly. "Watch this," he said. Mara and Jonah moved to either side of the corridor, carefully placing energy charges. Elias confronted the squad head-on, taunting them with minimal movement, drawing them into the narrow passage. As the Deathworlders advanced, the charges detonated, collapsing sections of the walls and blocking the attackers while leaving the humans free to evacuate the civilians. Alien witnesses gasped. This was not the brute resistance they had expected. These humans were clever, resourceful, and fearless. They turned impossible situations into survival opportunities. By the station's midpoint, the humans regrouped in an abandoned command center. They were exhausted, bruised, and covered in soot, but their morale remained unbroken. Elias spoke quietly to his team. "They're strong, faster than anything most species face in daily life. But they are predictable in one way. They expect fear, submission, or rigid responses. Humans are neither. We adapt, we fight smart, and we never surrender. That is why we survive." The next wave hit harder. Deathworlders had brought in reinforcements, using heavy weaponry to blast through the station's defenses. Human pockets were scattered. Civilians were trapped. The situation looked grim. Yet humans remained the only organized force capable of resistance. Elias devised a bold plan. Using Tessa's intercepted communications, they lured a group of Deathworlders into the central hydroponics chamber. The room was full of massive plants, hanging water tanks, and tight walkways. It was a perfect trap. As the aliens pursued, Jonah released modified drone units, small flying machines that created blinding light and sparks. Mara triggered the water tanks, flooding the lower walkways and forcing the attackers into constrained positions. Elias led the final charge, moving unpredictably among the columns of plants, striking with precise blows that leveraged the environment. The Deathworlders were caught off guard. Their coordinated assault faltered under the humans' unpredictable tactics. Each move by the humans seemed illogical to them, yet it worked. Panic began to set in among the attackers. Elsewhere on the station, other humans replicated similar strategies, using engineering knowledge, improvised tools, and quick thinking to outmaneuver and disable the Deathworlders. Alien species who had hidden in fear began to peek from cover, astonished at what they saw. Humans were small, lightly armed, but unstoppable in ways they could not comprehend. Hours turned into a cycle of attack and retreat. The Deathworlders, frustrated by their inability to dominate, began pulling back from key areas. Their communication showed hints of confusion and even respect. Humans did not just survive, they had rewritten the rules of engagement. Elias and his team finally regrouped in the central atrium. The station was scarred, smoke still rising from fires, alarms ringing intermittently, yet civilians were alive, and major Deathworlder forces had been repelled or trapped. "They didn't expect humans to think this way," Mara said, exhaustion in her voice. "They never do," Elias replied. "We survive because we don't rely on what they think is normal. We adapt, improvise, and face fear with action. That's what makes humans different." As dawn approached over the horizon of Aurelia Station, a few remaining Deathworlders retreated to their ships, their pride wounded. They had underestimated humans. For every ally and enemy species observing the conflict, one truth became undeniable. Humans were not to be underestimated. They had faced beings from worlds that bred only survival of the fittest warriors, and had not just survived, they had thrived. Elias looked out over the station from the command balcony. The damage was extensive, but the station still stood. Civilians slowly emerged from hiding, grateful and shaken, while alien leaders sent cautious messages of truce. For the first time, humans were not seen as weak, submissive, or secondary. They were unpredictable, courageous, and ingenious. They were a force to be reckoned with. Elias's communicator buzzed. It was station control. Captain Kane, are humans always this effective? Elias smiled faintly. Always, he said. You just never expect it. And with that, humanity left its mark on Aurelia Station forever. The Deathworlders had stopped pretending to be civilized, but humans had shown that true strength came from more than brute force. It came from adaptability, ingenuity, and the unbreakable will to survive, qualities no species could predict, and none could easily overcome. The day had been brutal. The station bore scars. Civilians had suffered fear and chaos. But humans had proven a simple, undeniable truth. No matter how deadly the universe, humanity would always find a way to endure, and in doing so, redefine what it meant to be strong.